What's the number one challenge for businesses today?
Workforce development, attracting, recruiting, and retaining people.
And that's why we created this podcast, designed for the frustrated CEO, the under-resourced recruiter, or the overworked manager, to give you the tools to tackle those WTF moments.
It's time to open another workforce therapy file. Welcome back to Workforce Therapy Files. Today we are on file 8, where we're going to be discussing a series of 3 files. Recruiting begins with retention. Mm-hmm. This file that we're going to be discussing today is about the Excitables. Mm-hmm. This would be your 0 to 6 months of employment folks.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that, Jamie and Jason?
Well, first, I'd like to talk a little bit about why we split this up, because we want to retain everybody that works for us that is doing good and great work, right?
Yes.
But I think it's important to look at that first 0 to 6 months because their needs are just so much different, right? And the reasons they leave might be different. So I'm curious, what was your worst first day like?
I definitely know what mine was. When I was in college, every summer I would have a different job. And I spent the summer doing different things all over the place. And one of those summers I worked on a hog farm, which was inherently a dirty and stinky job, of course. But on my first day there, I showed up and I didn't understand at the time, but there was a hazing ritual, a hazing aspect to the first day on this farm. Very large farm, 1,000 animals on this farm. So it was a very big operation. And on that particular day, one of the hogs had died, and they asked me to dispose of it, but gave me no instructions, no information on how to do this.
So you walk in.
So I walk in, and they ask me to do it. I end up using a front loader tractor. These are animals that weigh hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds, thousands sometimes.
And you knew how to work the front loader?
I did.
Nice.
I knew how to drive a tractor, and the front loader part wasn't that much more to figure out. But yeah, no instructions, no training. We're going to be talking about training in a bit. Mm-hmm. And I was just thrown into it. So I did it. I didn't maybe do it the best way, but I got it done in a creative way. And I rolled in the second day, and it was like I was part of the team. They just, patted me on the back, and we kept rolling. But it was a very interesting first day, a very kind of, I'll say, a disgusting first day. Not that the hazing was appropriate, but beyond that, they were all great to me. So once I kind of passed the test that I could handle the level of work I was going to be in for, and I think that's what it was really about, Is he going to be able to cut this? Is he going to be able to
Is he coming back for day 2?
Yeah, is he going to show up? And I showed up, and it only got better from there. But that was a pretty rough day because there was a lot of self-doubt, like, oh my gosh, do I want to do this? Do I want to spend 3 or 4 months doing this?
Yeah.
And I didn't.
It sounds awful.
It was. That day was awful. It got better. I got into a routine. I kind of liked driving a tractor, and I liked being around animals and little piglets, and it was a fun.
And as far as hazing goes, only 1 day of hazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
that
good
could have
considering.
been weeks of hazing.
Yeah.
Right.
There was another hazing incident later, but it was all in fun, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
They asked you to ride a pig.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's a good way to earn your stripes.
Yep. That was more of a fun day. Like everybody was trying to do it because there was one that was a little more wild than the rest.
But it wasn't as fun for the pig.
Yeah, I don't think she enjoyed it, but we had a good time. They buck just like a cow, and they don't want you.
No.
Want you back there.
No.
I would say their vertebrae aren't very strong.
I don't know. They're stronger than you think.
Really?
They're dense. Yeah, they are some strong creatures.
So, Jamie, what about you? What's your worst first day?
So there was a job I moved for. And when I got down there, so I'm in a new city. I bought my very first house. And I went to work. And when I got there, I got put into this room that had like a flickering light. And
Like the fluorescent?
like the fluorescent lights all like flickering. There was
Okay.
like a folding table, and they brought me 2 binders and told me to read.
Really?
I had no idea that the building that I was in had a McDonald's in front of it. I literally thought it was the only restaurant in the entire town because this was before smartphones, right? And I hadn't had a chance to explore around the
So
building.
you started your career at 12.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I am 105. So yeah, it was a little bit frustrating. And then a couple weeks later, a situation popped up, and I was asked if I'd ever done investigations before, and I had, and I thought I was really good at them. And I went to do the investigation, and then I brought back my report, and my boss was like, I mean, this is kind of a good start. But did you think about this, or this? And I was like, nope, sure didn't. I did not think about any of those things, and you're brilliant.
And this is because your first day of employment included 2 binders.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the rest of the training that went along with doing all the things or understanding the company. So yeah, it was not a great experience. And I think it's neat. Have you thought of yours, Molly? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
I have.
Well, never mind. Tell me yours.
So this is my first paying job.
Yes.
Because I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So I worked regardless, I just didn't get paid. It was more of a voluntold working experience. So my first paying job, are you ready?
I am.
I was a Subway sandwich artist.
Yes, you were.
Y'all,
Sandwich artist.
I walked in there. I'm going to make some sandwiches, right? So go in. They were pretty nice. Manager was great. And then lunchtime starts because I started summer in between school, right? School season. Lunchtime, very busy. Subway, popular place. This was back right about the time that the guy that was eating the sandwiches and lost
Jared.
like 400 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
It was right around that time. So lunch at Subway was hopping.
Yeah.
And they left me. They left me in the store
By yourself.
by myself
During lunch.
during lunch. I thought. So I'm getting a line of people. I'm like, surely to goodness somebody is in the back, right? Somebody sees this happening. No. They were all in the freezer partaking of things that they should not have been. That was my first day.
While you were out there working up a sweat.
Working
making
up.
them sandwiches.
I'd never cut bread before.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing.
So you didn't even know to do that V cut that they do at Subway?
Yeah. And I'm like, why isn't the meat going in like it's supposed to?
Yeah. There is artistry.
There is.
Yeah.
But it was a bad first day. The individual that was managing that store at that time that was his last week.
Yeah.
So clearly, I understand why. But after that, the manager that I then worked with actually taught me how to make the sandwiches and manage the cash register. Keep in mind, I was 15. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a while ago. Like, Jamie, I'm 105. But just, being left and completely oblivious of what I was supposed to be doing. If it hadn't been for the lady that then managed me that came in a couple of days later, I would have left.
Yeah, you would have.
Yeah.
was
I mean,
awful.
all of us, if you were to listen to that story, obviously at some point something shifted to make you decide to stay a little bit longer. And most people don't want to quit after day one. But it's interesting because if you look at turnover data, there is something that happens in that first 6 months. And in my experience, I like to say if somebody leaves in their first 6 months because people don't typically accept a job to fail or to quit, it means that there was something that went wrong in the recruitment process or in the onboarding process.
So I have a note here that says across all industries in the United States, so it doesn't matter which industry, 33% of new hires leave their job within their first 6 months of employment.
Yes.
33%.
33%. What's the source for that?
That's a great question. I'll find it before the end of the episode.
All right. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, show notes.
All right. So if 33% of people leave within their first 6 months, what are the things that influence that? So I wanted to start with the first thing, and we've mentioned this on multiple episodes, and that's how do we plan for our new hire, right? Mm-hmm. And planning has to happen. I can't tell you the number of people who have started and gotten to work on their first day, and I've heard stories of people not knowing they were coming. Like, oh, I thought you were going to start next Tuesday.
Oh, today is your day?
Today's your day? Nobody told me. Just followed Tommy around. There's zero plan for
We'll
how
be
you're
ready
gonna
for
be
you
there.
tomorrow.
Yeah, what a waste of company resources, time, and a terrible experience, right?
Well, you don't feel appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
You show up on day one and they don't even know.
Yeah. Or if you show up on day
supposed to
one
be
and your
there.
computer doesn't work and your phone extension's not connected, you've got all of these expectations for how you get started, and you don't have the tools or resources to be able to do it.
Okay, so I have a question since you're going down that road.
Hit me.
Do you have a story about your best first day
Yes.
of employment?
Yes.
Jason, do you? If not, be thinking about it so Jamie can go.
Yeah. I mean, mine's simple. I mean, I started a job once and someone sat with me the whole day, showing me everything. I first got a tour of the building, explained the history of the company, the background. I met some of the senior leaders that were a level or two above me, got a tour of the building, got a tour of a warehouse that we owned next door. Went to lunch with a crew of people. It was great. We all sat down, kind of built some camaraderie. Going into day two, I felt good. Unlike the pig job where I was like, what have I gotten myself into?
That's right.
So yeah, no, that's a maybe not the perfect way to do it, but it is a much better way to go about it. How about you, Jamie?
So I have to set the scene a little bit. I was leaving a job where I was working 60, 70 hours a week and commuting 55 minutes each way. I was getting phone calls through the night, sometimes 2 and 3 in the morning. I had a small child, and I was trying to figure out how to balance life. And then I found this opportunity. And it was interesting because the onboarding process started 2 weeks before I got there. I received a message from my soon-to-be boss that was telling me how excited they were for me to join. I got a fruit basket from Paul's Food Market. He didn't pay for that. I don't even know if Paul, who owns Paul's, but it was an amazing fruit basket. And in it had something for my husband, and it had something for my daughter. And the card said, "We can't wait for your family to join ours." They paid attention to who I was in the interview process so that they would know. And it had like a doll in there for her.
Wow,
It was the
that's
most beautiful
good.
basket ever. So then when I started, my computer was functional. There were meetings that were already set up. They had a week and a half of lunches for me to meet key people that I needed to know. There were regular touch bases with my leaders set up. I mean, whenever you talk about having a plan and feeling like not only did I feel like they looked for me, but they also planned for me. I mean, I felt VIP. I mean, I had like swag. Everybody was reaching out to me. It was a very cool
Yeah,
starting
that's
experience.
good. That's really good. We do the swag thing. As a company, we'll send them some swag because that's another aspect of it is the remote work aspect.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe that no one's there with you all
right.
day your first day. A laptop shows up in the mail,
Yeah.
and even if they're trying to be good, maybe they'll send you flowers or they'll drop a hoodie in a packet with the laptop and a little note. But I mean, like, how do you approach the remote work appreciation? First day is important. First date, it's your first date. You got to make an impression. You want to show them who you really can be, not just who you are every day, but who you can be, so that they understand, so that they're comfortable settling in. Like you said, they made the right decision. They don't become part of that 33%.
Absolutely.
So how do you do the remote thing?
I have some ideas and things that we've seen and worked with some of our clients on, but I want to hear about your best first day.
My best first. Well, it was the one I just told you about.
Oh,
It
that
was,
one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then that one for you. So I'm the one that's
You're
left.
next. Yep.
So my best first day is I was at Luckett and Farley. It's a local architectural and engineering firm.
Yeah.
I was the talent scout, being hired for that role. When I walked in, my door already had my name on it. There were things on my desk, my computer, tchotchkes, all the things. And much like your story, my first 2 weeks were already planned out. Mm-hmm. So lunches, some meetings, key training times, events that were in the evenings that they wanted me to be a part of. It was just a great experience all the way around. And they definitely had a map of where the restrooms were because it was an older building, so it wasn't something that was...
And they're architects.
And they're
like,
architects.
and we put the bathrooms here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's great. So going back to your question, Jason, of remote and how
Remote
that works,
onboarding.
you have to do all of that, but mail it to them. It's almost like so through the first meeting of the day, not orientation, but setting up that virtual, hey, how's it going? Glad you're here. Excited for your first day. We recommend that happens at least for the first 2 weeks, every single day, even if it's just to touch base,
Yeah.
to make sure they show up.
Yeah.
I think it's also really good for remote work to try to find ways to engage with each other like you would if you were passing each other in the office. So during the pandemic, there were a couple of team members that I onboarded, and I'd go into the building and just make videos. Like if today were your first day in the office, right now you would be having lunch with me in here, right? So that they could see what it would look like whenever we were going to be all reunited.
That's good.
I think it's really neat to come up with different ways to engage with each other. Like we did a virtual 5K where people took pictures and added it to our team's board, or just finding ways to connect as a team. But I also think what's equally important is to share what are some of the reasonable expectations. So, for example, hey, this might be your first fully remote. Is this your first fully remote role? If so, this is how we combat meeting fatigue. You know, here's some tips for how to set up your workspace at home so that you don't get too tired or too just worn out with being on video calls all week, right? So just having some time where you are sharing, here's some things that we ask for, and then here's some things that are also allowed and permitted.
Definitely having a plan and not a reaction to it. You know, you were saying earlier about the person walking in, oh, today's your first day. I thought you were supposed to be here next week. You know, that to me just ensues chaos and is not engaging. It's actually very scary to think about. I've just given up the job that I had to come here.
Yeah.
And you didn't even know that I was supposed to start today.
Right.
Help me understand. Or you spend the first 4 to 6 hours signing paperwork. Come on.
Well, and retention can start in the interview process.
Absolutely.
So I'll tell a story, and she could be listening, but one of our new team members who hasn't actually joined the team yet, but she's signed on. She starts in a few weeks. She lives 8 hours away. And in the interview process, we heard her say, we were having a great conversation. We flew her in and had dinner with her, and we were having a conversation about she was saying that she's always thought it would be really neat to own a bed and breakfast, and you know that would be a neat thing to do maybe in retirement or later in life. So as part of the process, we mailed her a book about how to start your bed and breakfast, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a little thing. I mean, I want to always be getting better. So I know I'm not doing enough. But I think little things like that, starting early, building that brand. She had 3 job offers. She's chosen to work with us. And I don't know how much that little book meant, but we're listening and we really care. And we think that's a really cool thing. It attaches us to her, attaches her to us. I want to keep doing those things. And I personally want to keep getting better at it. So
Absolutely.
I think it can start as early as the interview process. Personal notes, like hear things that they're saying about, you got that doll for your daughter. They heard that in the interview process, right?
Yeah, they sure did.
And they took a note and they said, we want her, when she starts, do something for her daughter because that's what's important to her right now.
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
It's a really cool connections point.
Yeah. So it starts at the interview process. Then we just talked about day 1.
Yeah.
It's important to show appreciation early. It's important to show that you're listening early. What else can you do in those early days to maybe show a new employee that they're appreciated? Because again, the goal here is retention. We want to keep this person.
That's right.
If they're as good as we think they are, we want them to stick around longer than that 6-month period.
Well, and I want to make sure that we mention and cover the fact that if you don't have an onboarding process written down and people held accountable to different things and making sure that the new person's calendar is ready to rock and roll, I mean, even their computer. If you don't have something written down, someone's doing it, but it's probably not what you would want.
And it may not be the same experience for everybody that joins.
Right.
right?
Right.
Like if I referred you, you might get a completely different experience than somebody I don't know.
And then I'm going to be like, Jamie, why'd you refer me to this job?
Yeah, right.
You're crazy.
I do want to add that there's a secondary goal as well, and that is that we want new hires to become as fully functional as possible, as quickly as possible, right? And they want to too. Nobody wants to be the person that is chasing people around and being like, how do I do this? How do I do this? Right? So when we're putting together our onboarding plan, I think it needs to cover the first 6 months. And a lot of people stop at orientation. It's that new hire paperwork that Molly was talking
Yeah,
about.
orientation is not onboarding.
Not at all. Not at all.
That's compliance checks.
That's right. So I think you have to build something that is custom to you, not downloading some sort of checklist off the internet and just using it. You have to think about what would it take for somebody to be effective in this role as quickly as possible. Who do they need to know? What access do they need? What training might they need? What time do they need to learn each element of their job? And as a leader, how often am I going to meet with them to see whether or not what I'm providing them is helping them? Because it's one thing for me to say, this is what I think it needs to look like. But if I'm doing it all with lecture and you are a visual learner, like that may not be the right way to do
that's
it.
not going to work.
Yeah. So that's what I think your first 6 months needs to look like.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, regular check-ins too, right? Like temperature
Absolutely.
checks. How's it going? Are you getting what you need? Ask them.
What's going well? What could go better?
Yeah. Some may not expand on those things, but others might say, "I'll tell you, this thing has been really hard for me. I'm not getting enough information." Then okay, I know what to work on.
Absolutely.
Don't guess at it though. Just asking your employees. It's the best thing to do.
And I think a good rule of thumb on that is meeting daily for the first week. How was today?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we're going to do tomorrow. Here's who you're going to meet tomorrow. Here's the reason why I want you to meet them.
What'd you get out of today?
What'd you get out of today? To make sure that those things were captured. Absolutely. And then after week 1, if it's appropriate for the job, maybe it becomes weekly. And then after the first month, maybe you start making it a little bit further out. But staying really connected to make sure that they're getting what they need to progress is really important.
And if you can't, then having a group of individuals within your organization, no matter how big or small, that are part of the assimilation team, that are part of the, buddy system, if you will, someone that they can connect with, even if it's not someone necessarily that they will be working alongside, really helps individuals feel important. And what they're going to learn and share from these other folks will help them with an engagement level unlike others. Because if you've got folks that are our steady eddies that have been there for a while and there's a different level of commitment and passion with the role that they're doing, they can share that with the folks that are new. And that's just as important from an onboarding into assimilation into the succession planning of that role.
I've
Great point.
got a question on metrics, things we can measure regarding this group, the Excitables, the
Yep.
first 6 months. That turnover numbers I kind of knew it, but it's shocking a little bit to me. So what are some things?
It's bigger than you thought it would be.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. I mean, because I own a small company. So, we really work at it. We really try. It's easier when you're dealing with smaller numbers, but at scale, that becomes harder to do because you have to trickle this mentality down to others. So what are some other things we can look at, some metrics you guys have seen, some indicators, some numbers, some things that we can look at as employers that will help us understand kind of where we're going, where we're at, if we're on the right path with our retention and turnover?
A couple of metrics that I think are very important include things like looking at turnover in the first 6 months, either by job, if you have a lot of people in the same type of job, maybe even by leader, location, but to try to understand where it's happening best and then where it's not. Because you'll be able to see what kind of onboarding is working well in which areas where you need to focus.
And then what do you talk? I mean, then you try to replicate the successes.
Well, and try to understand what's going well over here. And sometimes you'll find that it's completely dependent on, oh yeah, Tammy's one of the best trainers. Tammy takes care of people.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that you'll start to hear. Okay, great. Tammy, tell me how this is working. Tell me what you do whenever people start. Because then we might take Tammy's plan. That sounded way Western Kentucky. We might take Tammy's plan and then roll it out to other areas for the similar jobs.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's key to be able to understand the value of what it is that we're talking about. When you have someone that starts, where do they become profitable for you? And I get that I'm taking it to the business side and understanding that this is about retention, but you should also know what that value is to you.
Absolutely.
How much you have invested in this individual, not just from the first day of employment, but from the targeted aspect, and looking at the potential for at what point this person is comfortable and they actually start to be a source of revenue for you. When do they not need as much training? When do they not need as much hand-holding? When do they feel confident and competent in their role to be able to add value to that position, whatever that position may be? So I think you as an owner, as a key decision maker within a company, have to define what that level of time is. And it could be different for different positions because each role is different. So understanding the true root cause of your turnover within your organization and why it's important at all of these stages, in the excitables especially, because that's where your greatest investment is from a hiring perspective, in my opinion.
Well, no, one of the things that, Molly, that you're saying that I think I would like to expand on is that reasons for turnover. So if you don't know all of the reasons people are leaving in that first 6 months, then there's work that needs to be done, either in your systems or tools to be able to run those reports easier. It is important to understand why individuals say they leave. And if you're not doing exit interviews for voluntary departures, it's good to look and see how many of those are involuntary and why. Was it because of performance? Because now we need to ask ourselves whether or not we're putting the right tools in place or processes in place for someone to learn the job. Is it because of behaviors? And if it is, then are those things that people should have been educated on? Or do we
Realistic
really do
job
a-
preview.
Yeah. You know, like what are the things that help set people up for success?
Well, and like you said earlier, Jamie, people don't start to fail. You know, what is it that we can do differently to provide and arm these individuals with information to make the best decision for them to ensure that this role, knowledge, skills, and abilities, culture, environment, reward structure that we're offering as employers is a good next step for an employee. But understanding the value that they can bring and what that can turn into. One thing about the exit interviews that I want to touch on before we wrap up, if that's the first time you've asked that person a question about their employment experience, don't. Because I hear more often than not, if that's when you want to know why, it's too late.
Yeah.
But to your point, it needs to be a conversation that's happening daily, weekly, monthly, especially in that excitable phase.
And another thing that I think is important that gets clouded often because we get busy as employers, like getting someone started and getting them productive, is setting expectations clearly and early. If they know their expectations, then they can meet them or not. And then we understand where they're at. But if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, if they were just kind of, cast into this, or the boat was pushed off the shore and we hope it goes in the right direction, that's not fair to them. And it's not fair to their coworkers as well.
Yeah.
So setting expectations in a way that you can achieve the goals with that role are very important to keeping them, because if they know what they're supposed to do and they do it, then they're going to be off and running.
That's right.
And as a quick pro tip, one of the things I'd like to highlight is that most compensation programs align their compensation to where their midpoint is when an individual is fully functional for that role. So having some sort of process where someone can grow their compensation to hit midpoint that aligns with your training plan to when someone's fully functional also allows you that opportunity to make those adjustments for the productivity that's missed in the beginning. And it can grow as someone grows in their capability within the role.
Yeah. Another thing we were talking about when we were thinking through the content for this episode was in that first 6 month, the excitable phase, employees are probably at their highest likelihood of referring.
Yes.
They're there. They're pumped to be there. They're having this great experience. If they are having a great experience, they're going to reach out to other people in their network, people they've worked with before,
That's a
people
great
that may
gift.
have not ever done this job but would be great at it, and say, you've got to get over here. This is a great place to work. These are all the great things about it, and they're your best cheerleader. So they're going to start doing the recruiting for you, and you're going to, and while you're retaining them, if you're playing your cards right. But how do you know? How do you know? How do you push those boundaries? How do you create an excitable, a 0 to 6 month employee who wants to give referrals, who wants to be your recruiter for you?
Yeah.
How do you get there?
The best thing you can do is give them a great experience.
Give them a great experience.
Give them a great experience. People love to talk about their great experiences, but I will also share with you, people love even more talking about their horrible ones. And it gets so much traction on the TikToks and the insert hot new social media that I'm too old to use.
Well, and bad, ugly, just horrible stories are so much
Yeah.
easier to sell.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
And so measuring that really is good too. I mean, you don't know if they're going to be a good, so like you said, give them a great experience is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But also measure it in the first 6 months. So like we said, check in with them. We talked about Net Promoter Score or other measurables that you can use to say, would you refer us to someone else anonymously? And if they say, yes, you're on the right track. And if they say no, we've got some work to do with this new crop of employees that we've brought in the past 6 months, because some of them are saying they would not refer us as a place to work. So,
One of the, a lot of the engagement survey tools are starting to include new hire surveys as
I
part
was
of their
just
survey
getting ready
package.
to say that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, go ahead, Molly.
New hire surveys, I think, are critical to the success, and they even start before day one of employment. It's about the the interviewing experience and what their expectations were during that time. Did you expect one interview or 5 interviews? And I look at that first 6 months of that excitable phase and how much employers could really win from that just by giving it a little more effort.
for our listeners who are knee deep in talent acquisition and listening to this saying, so you're telling me I have to write this survey. I have to create, when am I going to do that? So what's a good, is there a good resource, or can we put something in the show notes that says these are some places you can
Absolutely.
find some? Okay.
Absolutely. Because one of the things I would encourage you not to do, and companies do this every time you hear surveys mentioned for like engagement or new hire, is people creating their own and administering their own. In order for surveys to have great responses, the concept of an anonymous response is really important to get genuine feedback, and demonstrating action on that feedback is also incredibly important.
Yeah.
So doing it yourself, like through SurveyMonkey or something like that, people don't want to give you feedback if they believe they can be identified.
Right.
So I would definitely use a third party. I'm going to go ahead and give a plug for one of my personal favorites is Org Vitals. They're a Louisville-based
I second
company.
that.
The tool is incredibly easy to use. They already have one that is set up for new hires that has questions that are based on a lot of research and data that can give you a really cool Net Promoter Score and can also provide you some information about the new hire experience.
Yeah.
I love
That's
it.
fantastic. Yeah.
Org Vitals did not pay for that.
So
Thank you, Dr. Bredshook.
So referrals, measuring, onboarding process, all key elements. Another thing that we identified in planning this episode was communication and marketing, which is something I know a little bit about. So, I think one of the things that we often ignore in our marketing as an organization is the internal marketing to our own team.
Yeah.
We often focus, if we're B2B, we're focused on those businesses we're selling to. If we're B2C or D2C, we're focusing on consumers. And we're really trying to affect, profit. We're trying to affect top line, whatever those metrics, whatever the North Star is for your organization. But one often overlooked thing for your marketing team will often be the internal messaging. What are we saying to the team about our culture? What are we saying to the team about what it's like to be here, what it's like to work here? And so I feel like it is unfortunately going to have to fall on the talent acquisition team to go to marketing and build a bond, build a bridge, and say, we need to work together. Here are some things. We need a percentage of our marketing efforts, maybe a small one, but something that is focused on our internal team. It could be as simple as some graphics to be put up in the break room, some print pieces, some digital
Scrolling TVs.
yes, digital efforts, recognition, all those things. But they can help you take your ideas and bring them to life, polish them, put them in formats and on platforms that can be delivered to your team.
Absolutely.
And really build up engagement so that those excitables in the first 6 months, and it needs to be modern. It does not to be, I mentioned, printed materials. That's great. That's fine. But you need to meet them where they are. Mm-hmm. So if it is on a social media platform, or if it is through your Wi-Fi network in the building, how you log in, if it's gamifying some aspect of their work life, those are good ideas. But work with your marketing. Their purpose is to be there to promote, and they are creative-minded people. Tap into that, and if you don't have it, look outside your organization. But you need, or identify someone on your team that has that kind of built into them. But those are things you can do to really drive retention.
I love hearing you say this, because you could do the most amazing things in the world, but if you're not telling people you're doing them, they don't know. And that includes when you have a new hire. So anything that you can do to highlight a new hire. I personally used to love it when people would do bios. So they'd send a picture maybe through the email, and it would be like, I'm so excited to welcome Molly to my team. Molly's going to be doing X, Y, and Z. Molly comes from school. Mommy. I just called you Mommy.
I get that a lot. Thanks.
Molly comes from school. Her hobbies include ... She has 2 kids and her hubs, right? She also enjoys boating. Like, whatever that is, so that when I see Molly, I have an opportunity to connect with Molly, even if I'm not on her list of people to get to know. I can be like, oh my gosh, Molly, you love to boat. What lake do you go to? And now we're having a whole conversation, and she's feeling welcomed.
Yeah.
I also think it does a second thing of marketing your internal efforts. One of the hardest things when you have openings is the effect that it has on the team members that are on the team that is under-resourced, right? And so they need to see that the talent acquisition process is acquiring talent. It is encouraging. It helps me know the job is posted. I see these jobs getting filled. I know that it's not going into this void. Their help will come. Whatever that feeling is, it does show that this is a process that is working, and that we won't be feeling under-resourced for too much longer.
So, from us here, our scope and slice of the pie that we believe that we are strongly experienced and experts in some areas and gifted in others, helping organizations to avoid a failure to launch for your company is one of our greatest passions. How can we help you do that in looking at the first 6 months of employment for the new folks that you bring on? How do we help you understand what the cost of turnover is within your organization? How can we help you understand what the right talent attraction looks like? I believe that Jamie and Jason and myself, we all have different areas of expertise and can make a great impact to the root cause of turnover within your organization.
Absolutely. Working this hard to find people and then putting little to no effort once you found them just feels like the strangest combination of responses, right?
Yeah. Pulling in the right resources and then processing that out so that you can focus on other things. You don't have to you've got a bucket of things that aren't getting done.
That's right.
And that's okay. Just I'm telling you, it's okay that those aren't getting done. But what you can't do is let them not get done forever. So you have to have a plan. So delegate, You don't have to be everything to everybody. And that is the end of this workforce therapy file. So again, today we talked about recruiting begins with retention. This particular file focused on the 0 to 6 month group, your newbies, your excitables, and take care of them. Take care of them because they are the future. And Jim, close that file.
Thanks for listening to the Workforce Therapy Files. We hope you learned something new, and we're thankful for the time that you spent with us today. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us. Our contact information's listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your head up.